What's going on, guys? I'm excited to post this video for you. I have some clips from Cleanspark's earnings call, a couple of really great tidbits from the Q&A, and Cleanspark and Bitcoin are both rallying today. We have Bitcoin up 5% and Cleanspark rallying nearly 40% on their good earnings and on Bitcoin's run. It seems like Wall Street's finally catching on to what we already know. But let's get into this earnings. I'm going to link you the full earnings call down below, so make sure you listen to it. We're also going to look at the charts for Bitcoin and Cleanspark. And let's get started. And first off, we're going to listen to a clip from Gary Vee, the CFO of Cleanspark, going over the balance sheet.
As of today, we have $229 million of liquidity, which includes $62.5 million of cash and over 3,700 Bitcoin, representing approximately $167 million of Bitcoin value. Additionally, as of the end of the quarter, we had over $860 million of assets and just $14.5 million of total debt. Our balance sheet is one of the strongest in the industry and provides us great flexibility going into the halving.
Alright guys, now I'll leave this down below for you as well, but this was just Cleanspark's press release regarding their earnings. And they reported a revenue of $73.8 million, beating the estimates of roughly $71 million, I believe. We saw a net income, this is big, a net income of $25.9 million, an adjusted EBITDA of $69 million. And their revenue grew 165% over last year. And you might have noticed in their last mining update that we went over. They were at like a 10.8 exahash, 10.1. Well, now they're at a 12.5 because of that expansion that they were talking about in that update. They are getting those machines online and hashing at the Sandersville site. Now I want to go over some quick words from Gary Vee, and then we're going to go to the Q&A and listen to a question regarding the Mississippi acquisitions. But the CFO Gary Vee says, "We frequently emphasize the three efficiencies that we believe are imperative to our continued success. Efficiency of our equipment fleet, efficiency of our facilities, and the efficient use of capital. The results this quarter are the culmination of that focus. To present these results, to have demonstrated exponential growth, and to have secured our path to 50 exahash per second while exceeding all market expectations is proof that the Cleanspark way is working. I'm extremely proud of the growth that we've accomplished as a team. We're well positioned for the halving, and we have the liquidity and balance sheet strength to enable us to continue to not only survive, but to thrive into the halving and beyond." And as a side note, we're going to go into a question in the Q&A regarding the halving and a way that Cleanspark's going to get more global hash rate. So stick around for that question. But next up, let's listen in on their Mississippi acquisitions.
And our next question comes from the line of Josh Siegler with Cantor Fitzgerald. Josh, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi guys. Thanks for taking my call today. Congrats on the results. I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into the Mississippi acquisitions because this marks a clear change in strategy from how you've been positioning your vertically integrated sites in Georgia. Can you give us a little bit more detail on the rationale to really expand the geography and how you're feeling about the new Mississippi move?
Yeah, Josh, thanks for joining the call. How we're thinking about Mississippi is another Georgia. It's a place that we're seeing a lot of opportunities based on how we view and interact with the grids that are located in that part of the U.S. We feel very comfortable with those systems and grids, and we see this as our first foray into Mississippi. Anywhere that we go, we're going to look to do similar things where we're going to be looking to expand our footprint, be a meaningful part of the communities. Things like that. So this is an entry point for us in Mississippi, and we expect that there's a lot of opportunity there. If you think of headlines about reading about any miner right now, Mississippi is not a place that you're reading about, and that for us points to a lot of opportunities in the research we've been doing over the past several months. So we're excited about it and see it as another home that will spin up and do similar things and gain the same efficiencies.
Now I still have a couple parts from the Q&A that I want to feature, but let's quickly look over the chart. Things are going pretty crazy. And Bitcoin is going insane today, a 5% up day, heading back towards our previous local top at 49,000. We're currently sitting just a hair under 48, and we have had a substantial move here. From this tightening pattern, we saw a breakout, we saw a break of that 44 and heading towards 50. Now I would start being a little cautious here. Bitcoin is becoming overbought on some of the time frames, and I would have liked some consolidation along the way, some levels being established, but everyone likes to see a move like this for Bitcoin. This is bringing a lot of hype to the miners, and Cleanspark, for example, because of that good earnings and because of Bitcoin's run up, Cleanspark is up nearly 40% today. Yes, Cleanspark is now in the 14s after just yesterday being at like $10, and we saw a huge gap up pre-market, and after the close. Now, if you're wondering about buying, I personally wouldn't buy on a 40%, 30% update like this. I would look for some retracement first. And for some of you that are up massively, for some of you that are thinking about maybe taking profits, one good route to go is some covered calls. Sell a covered call at a higher strike instead of selling here. If you're thinking about selling here, you have the opportunity to sell at a higher price while also collecting premium along the way. Now, there are some negatives to this strategy. For instance, say if you sold a $15 covered call and Cleanspark runs to $17, $18, well, you're selling your Cleanspark at $15 unless you roll the position out. So there are some negatives to selling covered calls. But the positive is, one, if you're planning on selling here, you could potentially sell at a higher price. And two, if it doesn't reach that strike, you collect some premium regardless. But I do think selling covered calls after a run like this isn't a bad way to go. The market isn't just going to run up and run up and run up. There are going to be some pullbacks. There are going to be consolidations along the way. And only a few days ago, Cleanspark was in the 7s and 8s. So keep that in mind. While they did give some great earnings results, we saw positive EPS. And I have told you guys I expect that potentially. We'll probably see it next quarter as well. Or the quarter we're in, January, February, and March, which is before the halving. We might likely see another really good earnings. But I would personally be careful with Cleanspark here. I'm not personally buying here. If you're looking at this long term, of course, I think it's still a good DCA, but I would personally look for a pullback, at least an attempt to fill this gap. If you're trying to be a little patient, I wouldn't be surprised if we do start cooling off to come down towards $11. There is a possibility we never see under 10 again. But as for the chart, Cleanspark's looking good. It's now above its moving averages. Its moving averages are pointing up, but I would personally be a little cautious on a day like this. But in an effort to not make this a very lengthy video, let's go over the next question. This is regarding Cleanspark getting more of the global hash rate, because the halving will knock out some miners that are less efficient.
You mentioned the halving potentially knocking off 15 to 30% of global hash. I don't know how detailed you need to get on the call, but kind of if you could give us maybe some broad strokes, how you're kind of coming up with that number.
Yeah, I'm going to give you some broad strokes. One thing that nobody knows is really the exact percentage of what machines are where and what their power rates are behind that. What we do know and what we can see is that there are a lot of machines that are still plugged in that are not nearly as efficient as they're going to need to be. An easy example of that is, there's public companies that are still openly running miners that have an efficiency between 38 and 44. And so I really believe, whether it's, immediately at halving or, sometime plus or minus a month around halving, I'm a believer that, everything on the above average side is going to start to struggle. And, as much as public companies may have balance sheets that can allow them to last a little while through some of these tough times, everybody else, they're kind of going day by day on their cash flows. So we point to that and we say, okay, we know that even there's some public companies running 38 to 44. That means also that there are, other assets out there that are significantly higher. What percentages, we don't know, and that's where our estimate comes into 15 to 30%. So, in our opinion, global hash rate, there's at least 15 to 30% that's less efficient than a 38 watt per terahash machine.
So that's very interesting. While the halving is going to cut rewards in half for the miners as a whole, Zach Bradford brings up an interesting point. These less efficient miners mining anywhere from 30 to 40 joules per terahash, while having rewards being cut might kick them out. It might make it just not make sense to continue using those machines. So while rewards will be cut in half from the halving, we also have potentially 15 to 30%, as per Zach Bradford, of the global hash rate that may no longer be hashing after the halving or somewhere around the halving. And that's one thing that I don't really see talked about. These miners like Cleanspark, while at face value might be taking in half the rewards, with these other miners no longer hashing, it might be more like a 25% cut, but we'll have to see when we cross that road. Now let's get into the final question. This is regarding the S21s, the more efficient miners.
I know you provided some details on under and overclocking efficiency last quarter, and I realize it's early days on the S21s, but I was wondering if you had a sense of how reliable, how efficient, and kind of how flexible from a overclocking, underclocking perspective these machines are straight out of the box. I know some earlier models, specifically I think like the XPs had some performance issues kind of on the first go around. So any context there would be helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm going to give you some broad strokes on this. So we have taken units in, we have tested those. The good news is the S21 is very flexible, is what we're finding so far. And you were right, the XP is one of the less efficient miners. It's because it was already released at the lower end of its, physical, I'll call it physical levels of efficiency. So pushing that to get it more efficient creates some challenges in the XP. The S21, on the other hand, has some flexibility built in that we've been able to extract, using some of our tech stack and our firmware. And so we've been able to get the S21 to perform at a level of 15.8 joules per terahash. And we've also been able to push it, even in an air-cooled environment, to as high as 220 terahash. So we're happy. It's still early days. We need to see how it behaves on a fleet-wide basis, but we're very happy with what we're seeing, the ability to push efficiency out of it, and also the ability to actually push it a little bit higher. To get to 220, it costs us a watt or two, but it's very, very little. So we're really happy with that. From a temperature point of view, we're seeing it to be fairly resilient. So it is 5 degrees Celsius higher rated than the XP also. We, of course, haven't gone through a summer yet with the S21, but all the testing we're doing where we are introducing heat into that as part of our R&D process, we're really happy with the results we're seeing. So we expect, I guess, in summary, to have the S21 represent the flexibility and benefits similar to a J Pro, except for already almost nearly double the efficiency.
These S21s should bring them even more efficiency. And from Cleanspark's very own research, they like what they're seeing. But there were definitely a lot of great informative parts in the Q&A. I highly suggest you listen to the whole call. As I said, I will leave it down below for you. And is there anything that specifically stuck out to you on the earnings call? Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks as always for watching, guys, and have a good weekend.